Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we are going to see how we can create and manage users and groups on a Linux machine. Now, you know that Linux is supportive of multi-users and multi-group environment. And what that essentially means is that simultaneously multiple users can manage the box at the same time, provided what kind of privilege they have. So they might be able to perform tasks within their own domain or their own directories or the files that they own, or they can also perform tasks on some shared directories or shared files. Now in that case, it would be a very much possibility that a user might fiddle around with the files that the other users have just changed. So in those kind of scenarios, only those files are shared which are not that much affecting on a particular user service. For example, log files, many users or multiple users can view them. Likewise, we have commands. For example, ls is a command. ls, many users can use that command at the same time. Similarly, if we want to check network connectivity, we can use the ping command. So let's see how we can create the user. To create a user in Linux environment, the command that we use is user add, and then we can add multiple flags. Very common flags that we normally use, the first one is -d, which is used to define the directory. Let's say if we have already created a directory in home for a particular user, let's call it maybe let's call this ABC. So if we create a user ABC and we define that its directory should be named as or should be pointed towards home ABC, then we would define it by using this switch or by using this flag. Likewise, there is another flag which is -m, which is to define that what directory needs to be created. In this case, this has to be created beforehand. But in case of -m, if I define, let's say, home XYZ, then at the time of user creation, this directory will also be created. I can define which shell user will be entitled to with small s, and I can define, let's say, maybe bin t c shell, or I can even say that or pardon me, just remove this one, or we can even do, maybe we can assign it bin bash shell or simple bin shell. So all these shells can be defined at the time of user creation. One other option is -c, where usually administrators define the username or full username of the account that we are creating, and normally we define that in inverted commas or in double quotes. Like we can say that maybe Sarah Smith, that could be one name. So once we look at the user parameters, we will immediately come to know that the user that was created may be SARA. It belongs to this username, which is Sarah Smith. Another option is capital G, another flag, and this flag is used to associate multiple groups to a user. So by default, if we create a user, let's say ABC, then by default the group that is created against user ABC is ABC. So user and group are the same. But what we can do is that we can associate this user ABC to a different group or multiple groups using this flag, which is capital G. But remember that once we define G flag and all the groups or one group that we define over here, then a user will belong to that particular group only. Just remember this thing, because there is a command which is user modify, which we will just see in a while, in which we can add additional groups to the user in addition to whatever group he is already associated with. Now, once a user has been created and we want to, let's say, delete a user, we want to not disable it, rather delete it. Delete its username, delete its password, its credentials, everything. Then the command is user del. User del is the command, and then the username. If we want to delete the home directory as well, because once we delete the user, its home directory does not get deleted, and whatever files are there in its home directory, they still persist. But if we want to remove that one as well, we use the switch -R. And there is another switch which is -F. What this switch does is that it will not only delete the home directory, but it will forcefully delete the user even if he or she is currently logged in. He will not get logged out, but the user will get deleted. And once he gets or she gets logged out, he or she will not be able to get logged back into the system. Then once we have created the user and we want to modify certain parameters, like we might want to modify, let's say, its home directory, then the command would be user mod, and then we can define the directory that we want to change it to. For example, it could be any path. Similarly, if we want to change, let's say, maybe change the name, then we can use the -C flag. There is a flag which is particularly associated with user mod, which is -L. So this is capital L. And once we do that and we define the username up here, this will make the user logged. And what it would mean essentially is that even though user will be existing on the system, if that particular user tries to log into the system, he will not be able to do so because his user is logged. If we want to unlock the user, we'll use the flag -U for unlocking. Now, I mentioned about adding the groups, and I said that capital G defines that what groups need to be associated that user with. So if we want to associate that user with additional groups in addition to whatever he is already having, we use a small a and then a capital G. And after that, we define the group. And what we can also do is that we can define multiple groups by putting in commas in there. So all these groups will be added to, or in addition to, the group that that particular user is already a member of. And the last thing that I want to mention about managing users is changing the password. If you are the user and you want to change your own password, you simply put in the command password. But if you want to change other users' password, then you need root access. So root can do that, but if you have got root access by using sudo, you can execute this password command. So you can type in sudo and then password, PASSWD, and then the username, and the password for that particular username will get changed. So now let's get onto the terminal and let's see how these commands actually work. So I'm here at the Ubuntu box. If I type in uname -a, we can see that what Ubuntu I'm using or what Linux version I'm using. So it's a virtualized box and I'm using Ubuntu in there. Now let's see what user am I. So I can type in who am I. This who command says that all those who are logged in. This who am I says that what am I, what user am I, what is my name. So that is ABC. Now let's try to change the password of ABC by typing in password, and it is asking for the password of ABC. So I am typing the password, and okay, so password unchanged, new Unix password, and I need to type it again. Maybe I need to get out of this. Okay, so again, current password. I have typed in the current password. Now I'm going to type the new password, which is different from the previous one. So once I do that, it is asking, because there is a password restriction, how many characters I need to use. So let's just type in a different password this time. So it is again saying that it's too simple. Maybe we need to use a combination of letters and numbers. So now I'm going to do that. I'm using a password which is a combination of letters and numbers, and it is around 8 characters long. So the password has been changed successfully. Now if I want to change, let's just try to create a user first so that I can show you what I have got in my mind. So the command would be, since the users need to be created by root access, so I need to execute this command using sudo, and then I type in user add and create the user's home directory in, let's say, home/Sarah, and afterwards the username. So let's say the username is Sarah, and maybe also put in the comment that this is Sarah Smith. Now once I do that, it is asking, since I've used the sudo command, it is asking for the password and the password that I have just set. Okay, so I need to put in Sarah at the end of the string, so I bring it over here. Alright, so I need to remove this one. I do not need to define it because system defines the home directory by itself, and by default it defines it in home directory of the Linux system. So once I press enter, the user gets created, and the way to see that whether the user has been created or not, we can look into the password file by typing in etc vi, or maybe I need to do that with sudo privileges, sudo vi etc and then password. And if I take it down all the way to the bottom, we see that this user Sarah, indeed it has been created, and this is the name that we had defined using the comment, and its home directory is home Sarah, and this is the shell that it has associated it with, which is bin sh. Now let's say that I want to change its shell. Maybe let's change it to bin bash. So the way to do that would be to use the command user modify with sudo privileges. So I type in user mod, and afterwards I can define the -s switch, then whatever shell I need to define, which was bin bash, and then the username, which was Sarah. Okay, so my sudo spellings are incorrect. Now we see, now if we look at the file again, the password file, we should see that the shell that Sarah was associated with earlier, which was bin shell, now it has been changed to bin bash. Now to set the password for Sarah, I can type in sudo password and then Sarah, and whatever password we need to set for user Sarah. Now if I want to switch over to Sarah user right from this terminal, what I can do is that I can do su minus and then the username, which is Sarah. Now it's asking for the password of Sarah, so I give in the password, and now we see that I have indeed been put into the user, which is Sarah. So now whatever I'll be doing, I'll be executing the commands by the user of Sarah. So if I also do pwd, we see that our home directory is home Sarah. If I type in who am I, we see that user is Sarah. Also another interesting command is id. If I do a man for that or manual for id command, it shows us the user and group against that particular user. So I type in id and then the username Sarah, and we see that its user id is group id, user id is 1003, group id is 1004, and group is Sarah or 1004. Now let's try to make Sarah a group member of ABC group. So let's first find out what is the group ID for user ABC by typing in ID and ABC. So group ID for ABC is 1003. So let's head back. Let's head back to our user ABC because it has got root privileges, and over here we can type in user mod minus AG because I want to add additional group, and after that I can type in the group name, which is ABC, and then the username, which is Sarah. I need to execute this command with root privileges, which I do now. And now if I type in ID Sarah, we see that Sarah indeed has become part of two groups, not only Sarah, which is created by default at the time of user creation, but now it is also associated with another group, which is ABC. Now let's say that we want that Sarah user should exist, but she should not be able to log into the Linux machine, so that we can kind of lock its account. So what we can do is that we can execute the command user mod minus capital L and then the username, which is Sarah. Now let's head over to another terminal and let's try to change to user Sarah. So though it is asking for the password, but even if I have supplied the right password, it is not letting us in. But if I unlock the user, let's say by typing in the command unlock Sarah and head back to the terminal again and try to log in, we see that indeed we have been able to successfully log in using Sarah username. Now in order to delete the user, we simply need to type in, with sudo privileges of course, user del, and we also want to remove its home directory as well, and then the username, which is Sarah. Now the user has been deleted and does not exist on the system anymore. Now just like users that we have created, we can also create groups, and there is nothing much about the group creation. We simply need to execute the command group add using root privileges and then the name of the group. We can also add in a switch -G to define the group ID if we want to. For example, I can type in group ID, let's say 7000 if I want to, and then the name of the group, let's just call it maybe testing with $G. And once I press enter, a group has been created. Now let's try to associate ourselves to this particular group by typing in user mod and then -A and then capital G and then the group name, which is testing, so $G, and then the username, which is ABC. And if I do an ID now on ourselves, we see that this user ABC, it is part of ABC and it is not part of testing. That's interesting. Now what happens is that this change, this group association change does not get reflected right away. Rather, what we need to do is that we need to log out and then log back in. So I have logged back in using another terminal and using ABC username, and over here we can see that indeed this user ABC, now it is also part of group testing. Now to delete the group, the command is more or less the same as that of user. We need to execute it with root privileges, and the command is group del and then the name of the group, which was testing. And once we do that, if I come back onto this terminal and do an ID again, we see that it is no more member of that particular group. So that's all there is to it, that how we can manage users, how we can manage groups, how we can associate users to different groups, how we can log or unlock the users and change the passwords. I hope you have learned from this video, and I would like to thank you for viewing.